Hello, everybody, and welcome to Campus Day and our Student Accessibility Services information session. We're just going to give a couple of people a chance to get in while I do a brief introduction. So we're glad that you're here joining us today. My name's Tanya Green, and I'm an advisor with Student Accessibility Services. And with me today is Malcolm McLeod. He's going to be kind of behind the scenes answering some of the questions in the question and answer tab. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to pop them in there. And Malcolm will be answering them off screen, but he'll also be helping me out as we go along and answering things during the presentation. So this is a general information session. We're going to talk a little bit about accessibility services, what kind of supports we provide. So as I said, feel free to ask some questions in that chat. We are recording this session, so if you do have any, if you'd like to come back and take a look at it later, I believe it's going to be available for 30 days after today, so you'll be able to come back and review anything. So I am hoping to have a little bit of time at the end for some questions at the end as well. So let's get started. So just to get going, a quick overview of what we're going to talk about today is basically what SAS is. So what SAS is, who we support, what supports and services we provide, how to register with SAS, how accommodations are determined, and some of those kind of nuances. So as I said, we're going to go through it, and if you have questions, just let us know. Okay. So first of all, what is SAS? So Student Accessibility Services, I'm going to say SAS because it's shorter, but we do use a lot of acronyms at university. So if you do find that I'm using something that you're not familiar with, please feel free to pop that in the chat and Malcolm can clarify it for me. So SAS helps students with academic accommodations. So we tend to focus in on the academics, the school element of things with regards to supporting a student's disability. Okay? We remove structural barriers when a disability is affecting the student's functioning. So if there is an impact, our focus is to help reduce those barriers, put accommodations in place to help students to be successful. Okay? Accommodations vary from person to person and situation to situation. So all students are unique. The way that we work is we meet with students on an individual basis, and we kind of customize accommodations based on the student's needs, the program that they're in, and what's actually going on at the time. So it is very individualized, but having said that, it does need to be supported by a student's documentation. Okay. And we do work closely with students and instructors collaboratively to determine what's needed. So it does mean that it is a negotiation between students, faculty, and SAS advisors to determine what's going to work best for that student. What the university doesn't do is we don't modify a policy or procedure when it comes to removing those barriers or to putting in accommodations. So that doesn't reduce the academic standards that need to be met. Students still must demonstrate that they've achieved the essential learning outcomes. So when they receive their degree at university, it doesn't say this was a degree with accommodations. None of that designation is applied, but we do make sure that the student has met all of the requirements for the course, the degree, and the program. Okay. Who uses our services? So students can use our services who have learning disabilities, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, autism spectrum disorder, injuries, concussions, significant illnesses, so any kind of medical condition, mental health disabilities, and mobility, dexterity, and perceptual disabilities. So any type of documented disability, we're able to provide those kind of supports for. We also will provide supports on a temporary basis. So if a student breaks their arm, breaks their legs, we'll put in some temporary supports in that case as well. Some of the accommodations that we use. So if you've received accommodations or supports in high school, so things like extra time or access to a resource room or technology, those are the kind of things that we do. But at university, we're much broader. We have a lot more flexibility. We have more options sometimes that we can provide to students. Accommodations in post-secondary are going to look different than high school. So that is something that sometimes students come in and they're a little bit concerned about what it's going to look like. And that's what our role is here to help guide you through that and to make sure that we're meeting the need, even if it does look different than what you've used in the past. So we do things like exam accommodations. We have an exam center where students would write their exams in order to receive those accommodations, probably similar to something that you may have had in high school, where you wrote in a resource room, or you had a resource teacher who was able to provide supports that way. So exam accommodations are done that way. In the classroom, we have note-taking programs, so students are able to access notes. That doesn't mean they don't have to go to class. They still need to attend class. But for whatever reason, if recording notes in a lecture style proves to be a bit more of a challenge, they have that option to request notes. Other classroom accommodations include things like preferential seating, FM systems that are available. Okay. Technology support. We do have in the library, we have a tech lab that has a lot of different software programs and adaptive technology that students can access to help them with any aspect of learning, whether it's reading their textbooks, whether it's taking notes, brainstorming, writing papers. So there's a lot of those neat technology apps, software programs that students can access. Okay. Our transition and orientation programs. We run these throughout the summer and from sort of lead up from now until classes begin. So it's an opportunity for students to connect with SAS, to get a sense of what is going to be appropriate for them as they make that transition to university. Okay. We do have 2 courses for credit that SAS, in conjunction with the psych department, will have 2 courses that students can earn. They earn a credit in it. And learn a little bit more about their disability. Advising, that's a big one. Malcolm and I will attest to the fact that advising is sort of one of our favorite supports that we put in place, is because we get a chance to connect with students, actually make sure that we're meeting their needs and we're helping them receive the right supports. Okay. Peer helpers, we have a great team of students that also provide assistance to students who are registered with SAS. Cited and meal guides for students who may need help navigating campus, figuring out where to go. We have some peer helpers that help with that. Personal support. So we are not, we have a counseling services office, so we don't do counseling per se, but we do provide guidance around making referrals to different areas on campus that students may need to access. So we do provide that personal support and guidance to help with self-advocacy, to understanding their disability, that sort of thing. Learning strategist. We have a learning strategist on staff. We're so glad to have Lindsay as part of our team. And so students can connect with Lindsay, who is our learning strategist, and she helps to provide different techniques, tips, skills to help students understand how to learn, but also layers in that disability piece. So sometimes a disability gets in the way of how you might learn something or how you may manage your time, and understanding those elements is really important. So she's able to help with that as well. Okay. As well as writing support. So writing a university level paper is a little bit different than what you may have experienced in high school. So we have that support there as well. Okay, any questions so far? We all right, Malcolm? Yep, okay. So moving into, connecting with SAS, that's the first thing that you need to do, right? Generally speaking, all students who are admitted to the university need to be admitted on their own academic merit. So based on your own grades from high school, you need to meet the cutoff for those degree programs, right? However, if you feel that your disability has impacted your academics in some way that has made it difficult, your grades aren't a true reflection of your potential, then you can fill out what we call our supplemental information form for students with disabilities, right? And so it supports your application, like I said, if you feel that your disability has adversely affected your grades and that you may be close to the admissions cutoff. So you still need to be close to the admission cutoff, but if you're not quite there, you can complete this form. Okay? It's submitted online. The form does not register you with SAS, so it is not your connection with SAS. It is just that initial opportunity to reach out to say, you know what, I have a disability and I think my grades aren't a true reflection. It's available until May 1st, so it is available online right now if you wanted to onto the university website, so you can log in to check that out. So once you've accepted your admission to U of G and you want to register with SAS, it's important to follow these 4 steps. So there's 4 steps in registering. First, you need to submit a new student intake form. The importance of that is it lets us know that you're a student who would like to connect with our office. Then you need to submit documentation that's going to support your disability. Right, attend an orientation. So throughout the summer and into early fall, we have different orientations where you get a good sense of what SAS is and how we can support you. And then the last step is meeting with your advisor. When you meet with your advisor, that's the critical point where you're going to have a chance to discuss what accommodations are appropriate, what accommodations are going to match with you and your courses that you're in, and how to access them and your responsibilities around that. Okay. So only after all 4 of those steps are completed will you be registered with SAS. So I'm going to take a minute just to go over each step in a little bit more detail, answer a few questions on it as we get going. So the first one is the new student intake form. Right? It's available online. You fill it out. It's just asking basically your basic information about yourself, your connection to the university, your disability, and some of your concerns. It is vital that you submit that as soon as you accept your offer to Guelph. So once you've submitted your offer to Guelph, you need to submit that. You need to fill that form out. So if you've had an early admission and you've accepted already, you can fill that out right now for the fall. What that's going to do is it's going to allow us to communicate really important deadlines and dates and communication with you throughout the summer. Okay. The deadline to submit that is June 15th. By submitting all of your documentation by June 15th, then you are essentially guaranteed being connected with somebody for September. If it's after that, we work really hard to get students accommodations and supports and everything in place before classes start. However, if it's after that June 15th deadline, just all the things that have to happen may take a little bit longer. So we can't necessarily guarantee it for the beginning of classes. The second step is submitting your documentation. Step 1 and step 2 are usually done at the same time because you're online, you can submit everything together. When you're submitting your documentation, it takes one of two forms that it takes. One would be a psychological assessment. So if you are a student with a learning disability, we need a psych ed assessment. It should be less than 3 years old and using adult norm testing. Right? So those are what you want to look at for your psych ed assessment. If you do have questions about your psych ed assessment, you can reach out to us and we will sort of go over the steps involved in getting it updated or any kind of follow-up required with it. Okay? For all other areas, a functional assessment is required. A functional assessment form is available on our website and you can log into that. You take that form, give it to your healthcare provider. So whether it's a doctor, a psychiatrist, someone who can complete the form with respect to your disability and can speak to the disability. So it does need to be a healthcare professional who can complete that form and then submit that. Okay. Outdated or temporary documentation. So if you have a doctor's letter or you have an old assessment, you can still submit those, and we'll work with you to get the updated and the correct documentation that will allow you to receive supports. That's part of why we want that the new student intake form early, so that we can work over the summer to make sure we have everything in place for when classes start. Okay. IEPs and doctor's notes generally are not valid documentation. So we don't accept the IEP from high school. What we do accept is what the IEP was based on. So the IEP would be based on a psych ed assessment or sort of a doctor's note, something along those lines. We'll take those and then we'll make sure that the documentation meets the criteria. I know that was a lot, but hopefully that made sense. Okay. Attending an orientation, right? So once we've got your documentation, as I said, you're going to get communication from us with regards to what's happening in the summer, different events, activities, things to learn about how SAS works, because it will be a little bit different. In the fall, classes start right away, courses, the semester is short, accommodations need to be put in place by deadlines. It's important for you to know that, and there might be some more responsibility on you than what you may have had in high school. Faculty aren't going to know the nature of your disability. They're not going to know that you get accommodations. So it's your responsibility and to connect with us so that we can make sure that you're getting everything that you need. Okay, so our orientations, we have 2 orientations sort of structures. Start Accessible happens throughout the summer. There's online sessions in August. There you're paired with a student leader. So there is a student leader who can answer questions as well. There's SAS and academic and learning sessions. Some of those sessions are required because it's a lot of process related. And so it's important for you to attend those. What's nice is by participating in Start Accessible, you get that early registration or the intake with your advisor. So you can have your accommodations and everything set up and in place before classes actually begin and know what to expect. So that's sort of key for participating in Start Accessible. And we have some in-person events prior to orientation week that give you a chance to actually connect in person, get familiar with campus, and other students as well. The SAS workshop. So the SAS workshop happens into the fall. It does again happen prior to your appointment with your advisor. So that would mean that your intake advisor appointment would be happening later. Okay. So those are the 2 orientation options. And then finally, I've talked a bunch about this, is step 4 is your advisor intake meeting. So this actually sort of summarizes everything and puts all the pieces together. So we discuss your documentation, we discuss the courses you're in, we manage what accommodations are going to work best for you given the classes that you're in. So we review and set up those appropriate accommodations, and we discuss the deadlines and expectations. So this is a joint endeavor, right? So it is between yourself, like students, and the advisors and the faculty to work to make sure that you're receiving the support that you need. Any questions before I continue on? Are we still good? Okay.
You're good to go. Yep.
Okay, thanks, Malcolm. Okay, so how are accommodations determined? I've talked a lot about the different kinds of accommodations that we have. Essentially, accommodations are in consultation with the student and the advisor. So based on our meeting and our connection, right? We also need to look at the individual students' functional limitations. So this is what's outlined in the documentation. We can't necessarily put things in place that aren't outlined in the documentation. In high school, you may have had accommodations that won't translate to university. So there are some supports that are going to look different in university. So it's important that we discuss those and what that's going to look like. Because again, it's a different learning environment and different structure. We also look at the course requirements, right? So for instance, some courses you may need, if you're in a math class, you may need a calculator for the class. However, if you're not in a math class, then a calculator as an accommodation might not be something that you would need. So we definitely discuss what is going to be appropriate based on your courses and your program, but what is also unique to you. And again, how it might look different than university, but at university than it did in high school. Okay. Any questions so far? We're still good on accommodations? Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
So the last little bit that I want to just sort of highlight is our confidentiality. So again, slightly different than high school or what you've experienced in the past, is at university we view you as an adult. So students are who we communicate with. When you need to book an appointment, it's the student that has to book the appointment. When we talk about your accommodations and your grades, it's always with the student. So you may have experienced in the past parents helping, talking to guidance counselors, talking to teachers. That piece is going to be different in university. Students can choose to share. There is we have a contract that students can sign, which will allow us to communicate with the parents, but generally speaking, we work with the students, and that's the only person that we sort of share things with. We keep information about your disability confidential, so that's not shared with professors or faculty or other staff on campus. They will know that you are registered with SAS. They will, in some cases, need to know, or we need to discuss the nature of the accommodations you'll be receiving, but the reason behind those aren't necessarily something that's not something that we would share with the professors or the faculty or the staff. Okay, so everything remains confidential. All our files remain confidential within our department. For that reason, the university is large, and there's lots of different offices that might be supporting you based on some disability related needs. So something like housing, right? If you need an accessible room in residence, right? You can reach out, you fill out a special accommodation form for residents, and they can look at finding a room that's accessible for you. However, they're not going to share that information with us, just like we don't share that information with them. Okay, so it is important that you communicate with all areas on campus, because we may not all, as much as we talk to each other, we don't share information about students across the campus. Same with financial services. If you are looking into accessing any bursaries or scholarships or financial aid for students with disabilities, there's different forms that they require. We don't share our information with them, and they don't share their information with us. So it might be, we'll talk to each other, right? But it will be you needing to make sure you fill out their paperwork, fill out our paperwork in order to get the supports. We'll definitely help you with that. That's part of our role, is to say, if you're looking for help with housing, this is how we can help, but this is what you need to do. Same with financial services. Okay, so went a little longer than I was planning to, but that kind of covers some general information about SAS. As I said, it is very individualized, so we do make things specific to the students. So if you do have any questions, I know there's been some in the question and answer section. We'll be around for a couple of minutes to answer those. But you also can contact us. So the phone number is on the screen there, 519-824-4120, extension 56208. Or you can email us at, and that email is wrong, I'm missing the O. It's sas@uoguelph.ca, or visit us on our website as well. And just a reminder, I know you're hearing this in all of the sessions today, that if you want to get 25% off at the bookstore, that is the discount code that you can use there, W22 Campus Day 25, and that'll get you 25% off anything from the bookstore. Okay, so got about 5 minutes or so. If there are any questions that you'd like us to answer.
Yeah, Tanya, I'm just going to jump in because there's a little bit about submitting documentation. So just as a reminder to everyone, you can theoretically submit documentation at any point, but we do have a deadline of June 15th of the summer to make sure we can guarantee accommodations for you when you start in September. Anything after June 15th, we can't promise that everything will be in place depending on the status of your documentation or if it's appropriate or not. So obviously the sooner the better. You can start submitting it today, but we do generally try and get everything in as much as possible by June 15th, but we still accept everything even up until into the middle of the semester, but we can't put accommodations in place until we have documentation on file.
Yeah, that's definitely true. It does take time to get everything sorted in place. As you knew, there's the steps involved. There's things that we need to look at. So yeah, due to those steps, it doesn't happen right away. So if you submit your documentation, you generally are going to have to wait probably a couple of weeks, maybe even longer, to connect with an advisor. And yeah, usually it's maybe 4 weeks or so to connect with an advisor, have your appointment, again, depending on the time of this school year and stuff. So the sooner you get it in, the better, definitely. Good call. And on that, and again, I know I talked about how some accommodations from high school don't always translate over to university, but also in the documentation, sometimes there's recommendations in the documentation, and recommendations, again, also don't always translate directly into accommodations. And that's why it's essential that we talk about what is appropriate in the post-secondary setting and what we're able to do. So connecting early with us gives us that chance to have those discussions so that there's no sort of surprises come September.
And there will be advisors on staff all summer too. So if you have questions about this or want to talk about how accommodations will look in the fall, once we have documentation on file, we can walk you through the process and what things will look like so that you're not caught off guard the first week of September.
All great questions. Any other questions from anyone? Okay. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I know we've all got a couple of minutes left, but I want to give you time to get to your next sessions so that you can continue learning. Enjoy the rest of your day. I hope you get a lot out of it. As I mentioned, it's probably a lot of information overload today. There's a lot of stuff going on. So if you do have any questions after the end of today, or you're talking to your parents and you're thinking, oh, we should have asked about this, feel free to contact us. Feel free to take a picture of that contact stream. Remember, the email is wrong, and we will get back to you and hopefully answer those questions for you. Okay. Well, again, thank you very much, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.